Hey there, EB here doing our weekly update. Hello, everyone. Um, Today is EB's birthday, 62 years old. I feel really good, but at the same time, everybody says, oh, don't worry about it. Age is just a number. You're doing great. But until you get to be 62 or however old you are, where it hits you, that you realize that you're in the finality of life, it's daunting. You remember your youth, you remember how much was ahead of you. I still feel like I have a lot ahead of me, but there's certainly more behind me. I saw my mother yesterday, who she's in an Alzheimer's facility and she's going to turn 90, and she's just a shadow of her former self, and it's really sad. So I'm happy. I'm having a great day. I'm about to hit the gym. Worked out this morning earlier. I did a podcast that I'm going to talk about later in the show today, or later in this recap. But it is not the same joy when you have a birthday when you're 20 or 30 years old. So with that said, let's get into it. Right now, I want to tell you a little bit about my background so that you understand where I'm coming from. I have always considered myself to be a middle of the road type of person. I've been a registered Republican, but I am a Republican fiscally. But I'm more of a libertarian when it comes to other issues. I would never call myself conservative, although I have voted Republican almost in every presidential election up to 2016. In 2016, I couldn't vote for Donald Trump, and I did not vote and could not vote for Hillary Clinton. I voted for the third party ticket. It was Gary Johnston and Bill Weld, who was the former governor of Massachusetts. And of course, in 2020, I again could not vote for Donald Trump. And with all the chaos, I voted for Joe Biden, and I am uh, happy I did. And I'm committed that I did, because I have a commitment towards democracy. But I got to tell you right now, I have never been more down on our political system. Again, I am for democracy. Anything that anybody who will promote democracy, I am not for an activist Supreme Court. Uh, and we do have an activist Supreme Court right now. It's an activist Supreme Court that is making laws and changing rights and not adhering to well settled case law. I don't like an executive branch that overshadows the legislative branch, and that seems to be what we are having. I can't believe we've come to this point in our presidency. Good afternoon, Kimberly and Jason. I can't believe we've come to this point in our presidency where we have these two, what I consider to be extremely low quality candidates. One, Joe Biden, I believe, is a good man. I think he's done some amazing stuff with infrastructure, with gun control, with lowering prescription drugs. I think the semiconductor and chip legislation he's done has been amazing. Economically, I think we've done pretty good. Inflation is certainly a major problem, but I'm not sure how you get rid of it. Everybody wants to lower the interest rates, but then people my age, 50 and older, have to make some interest on their money. Can't make money at 0 and 1%. But we certainly don't want interest rates to go to the Jimmy Carter days. I remember when I was 16 years old, they were 17, 18%. And there was rationing of gas, where one day you got your gas if you had an odd number on your license plate, and then an even number you went the next day to get gas. That was during the embargo over the oil. So I really don't know, but I do believe that he needs to step aside. It's the hardest job in the world, and I don't think he's competent at this point to handle the day-to-day grind. Sure, he has flashes of competency, but when you are that public and you have flashes of incompetency, um, I think, and your age shows, I think it's a problem for the country, and I think it's certainly a problem for our standing in the world. As to Donald Trump, I don't think he has the intellect nor the temperament for the job. So I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. But I do know that we don't have the quality of presidential candidates that we should have in our country. I think it started basically with Reagan. Um, he was an actor. Um, he had some guiding principles that helped with, tearing down the wall and the Gorbachev and, the fight against communism. But I think that's when we kind of started down the slide of having presidential candidates that were not of the stature and the intellect of a Nixon, of a Johnson, of a Truman, of a FDR, of a Theodore Roosevelt. Um, George Senior Bush, very good candidate. He was a president. He had the background of being an ambassador, of being a senator, head of the CIA. Um, but then we started sliding. Clinton was a smart man, but was morally flawed. George Bush, the son, was I don't think bright enough to be president of the United States. Barack Obama certainly got smarter as the job went on, but he didn't have the experience to go into it. And then we walk into Trump and Biden, and these are the type of candidates that we have. And what really bothers me is identity politics that is going on. I'm clearly torn. I don't know what we should do. Is it the lesser of two candidates? Are you voting for the party? Are you voting for democracy or autocracy? But what I will tell you is um, it's gotten ridiculous. I have a person who was a friend of mine in my orbit, didn't see him daily, but certainly in my orbit, who for basically the last 9 years has berated me for not supporting Donald Trump. Uh, in the beginning it was in jest, but then it's gotten very, very personal. And this person is entitled to their beliefs. But I got a text from that person at about 9:15 the other night, and I want to read this text to you because this is what's wrong with our country. And this was in response to Biden's obviously woeful performance in the debate. And, now we know that he may have some Parkinson's and some advanced senility. So this is what a text that I received out of the clear blue. At any time, you can go ahead and admit that I have been right and you've been wrong for the previous 9 years. Embarrassingly wrong. You flew the wrong flag when you voted for Biden, excuse me. You helped put this country at risk because of who you voted for. I hope to God that nothing happens while our country is compromised, because if it did and does, it will be on your conscience and on your soul. You voted for the worst president in our lifetime, and you flew an effing flag to tell everyone who you voted for. Now, certainly he's entitled to his opinion. And I responded by saying, please don't contact me again. I could have started a debate with him, but I did not want to. I could have said, look, if you want to meet me and sign a waiver releasing me of all criminal liability and civil liability, I will fight you anywhere. And when I put you down on the ground so that you can't come up, you won't sue me. Or I can just notify the police and ask you to stop harassing me. But the point is, that's hateful language. That's hateful speech. We used to be able to debate and respect each other, even if you had opposing beliefs, and we don't have that anymore. And I just got done interviewing this morning on my new podcast. It's called Good Skill Podcast, Betting on Yourself, and I'm putting some interviews in the bank. And I interviewed just an amazing person named Rebecca Rush, who did this documentary on Amazon Prime called Blood Road, where she rode the Ho Chi Minh Trail on a bike. She's a 7-time world champion on mountain biking. And her father was a pilot in the Vietnam War and was shot down in MIA. And she rode the trail with another person from Vietnam, a Vietnamese citizen. And she talked about when you ride or you spend this kind of time with somebody who has differing beliefs than you do, initially it is a little bit tough, but pretty soon you're just two humans. And she bonded with that person. And that there's a lesson in that, you know, we should be able to talk. We should be able to get together. So I am very, very down because I love politics so much. about where we are as a country and the lack of choices that we have for this most important office. Um, the Supreme Court has made some decisions. We're going to talk about the immunity decision, but they've also made some decisions that really are mean spirited. There was a decision where they upheld the criminal application of criminal laws to families that are homeless and living on the street. Sure, we have vagrancy laws, no question about it. Those are for mentally ill people that are, sleeping on your front porch. But families that cannot afford to have their own residence, whether it's leasing or owning, are living on a street in a tent, families. And cities are now criminalizing that behavior. And if we don't provide shelters or a place for these people to live, jail isn't the place for people like that. And it's really mean spirited. Um, we also have, the Biden interview that he did last Friday with George Stephanopoulos, which certainly, created more questions than answers. You know, it's okay to be 81 years old and you're sliding, but it's not okay when you're sliding as the president of the United States. Some 81-year-olds are just amazing. They run marathons, they can talk, they can write books, they can, lecture, they're professors. But other 81-year-olds, they age quicker. Some people have, onset dementia, or whether it's Parkinson's disease, and it's okay. But we're not electing a president based on what he did over the last 4 years, which I think has been pretty damn good. We're electing a president for what he can do over the next 4 years. Um, so, we also have Trump now, because I'm slamming Biden. I'm going to slam Trump. He called Chuck Schumer and Biden Palestinians this week. And I think he doesn't really understand that that's not what we would be after. He was trying to demean them and mock them because of the Gazan war, Hamas. Calling them Palestinians just in a broad brush uh, erases or mocks a whole group of people. Remember, the Israeli wars over the Gaza Strip. It's not dealing with the West Bank. The West Bank, where the Palestinian lives, has been peaceful. They are not launching bombs in Israel and ICE. So that goes to his lack of intellect or really understanding the world order. Yesterday, he mocked. Biden's look. He mocked Chris Christie. Overweight people. He mocked females. I mean, can we just stop doing this? Let's just talk about somebody's character or what they stand for. Let's not just mock what somebody looks like physically. He talked about Biden getting plastic surgery and how ugly his hair is. I mean, come on, man. Have you looked in the mirror? I mean, let's just stop it. Um, we also have the Alec Baldwin trial going on right now. I don't know where I stand on that. He's being charged with involuntary manslaughter. Look, two people died, or one person died, another person was shot. I think it was two. Um, there clearly were actions on that um, the production site, that they did not adhere to safety. And you don't point guns at others. I don't know how real live ammunition got on a movie set, but I am hearing some things that trouble me about Alec Baldwin's uh, conduct. I don't agree with how he handles himself. I think he's a nasty guy. I think he yells at people, but I'm certainly not a movie star, so I don't know what it's like to be accosted every day. I don't like a lot of what he says about people. So that's a trial that'll be interesting to see. The Karen Reed trial, we keep hearing the after effects of that mistrial. One, where, is it true that she's starting some kind of relationship with her lawyer? I think that's more gossip. And they showed a photo of a compromising photo of him grabbing her, I think was on her breast from behind. But I think what we have trouble in that is there was some jurors who said that they voted not guilty on the main claims, and they couldn't the main claims of second degree murder, and they couldn't reach a verdict on one of the smaller claims. And it turned out that there was a mistrial on all the claims. So that's something that is going to have to, uh, I think, have hearings on. So it's going to be very interesting on that trial. Um, we have the G7 going on in Washington, D.C. And I think this afternoon, Biden's going to do a press conference. And again, we'll measure to see he's going to have to answer some hard questions. There's going to be no teleprompter. Let's see if he looks down at notes. Let's see if he stumbles. You know, it's okay to stumble when you speak. I'm not a great speaker. I say too many ums, but let's listen to the substance of what he says. And if he's starting to not be able to finish a thought, or he's wrong about dates, or he said stuff like he said in the debate, I beat Medicare, which is nonsensical, then I think we have a problem. Hey, Chris Wheeler, how you doing? Um, the Matthew Perry death is starting to be something that I'm interested in. He was being treated with a drug called ketamine, which treats pain and depression. You hear it; it's called Special K, is the street slang term for it, and it's a replacement of opioids. And it seems that there is this culture in Hollywood where you can get these drugs, and different actors or producers are peddling these drugs. So I do think there could be, there is certainly a criminal investigation going on. He had his problems, obviously, with substance and alcohol abuse. Um, so, we're going to have to look at that. Hollywood, I think, needs to stay and make movies, Netflix stuff, and stay out of politics, stay out of drugs. Today we have George Clooney writing an op-ed saying that, while he lauds Biden's achievements and everything like that, he wants him to step aside. Certainly that's his personal belief, but he doesn't need to come out and do that. He's just a voter. I think that's a bad thing. And they're saying that he got permission from Barack Obama to write that op-ed piece. I am learning that there was some tension between Biden and Barack Obama, that some really residual bad feelings from the Biden camp, because in 2016, Barack Obama endorsed Hillary Clinton, who was his Secretary of State, and not his vice president, to be the Democratic candidate. That will sting. And also, I heard that he never invited the Bidens up to the personal residence of the Obamas in the White House. So we'll have to see on that. The Supreme Court, that's a problem. They also reversed, and this was a Trump um, uh, executive order and law, that a Trump executive order, where after the Las Vegas shooting, of the mass shooting, he said you can't have bump stocks that are put on handguns to make them into, almost a rifle. The Supreme Court reversed that and said you can't put on bump stocks, that is a Second Amendment infringement. Remember, Justice Anton Scalia, who was probably the most conservative of all Supreme Court justices in the Heller decision, said there can be limitations on the Second Amendment um, for the public good. So that's another troubling decision by the Supreme Court. And I think we need to look overseas and see what is happening. In England, Stormer was elected prime minister from the Labour Party in the largest landslide in UK history. 70% of the voting public voted to oust the Conservatives and put the Labour Party in place, because Brexit has not worked. Brexit was by Boris Johnson and some other conservatives to say we're going to pull out of the European Union. We're going to have our own um, currency, back to not the euro. We're going to do our own trading. And it turns out that it killed their economy and isolated them. And so the English people voted for Stormer, who's the head of the Labour Party. And I think his acceptance speech was amazing when he talked about serving the people and serving all people, not just the Labour Party, but all citizens. France, we had a little scare that the far right was going to take over on the first vote of the parliament. Turns out that once that really started to be felt by the public, that they reversed it. And so in the second vote, the far right lost a lot of seats. And now Macron's party is going to be close to the majority. But it just goes to show you that throughout the world, there are countries that are moving towards autocracy. But when they start to feel that autocracy, they bend back towards democracy. And I love democracy. I love free speech. I love freedom of religion. I love that we have our right to remain silent. I love that we have our right to a jury trial. I really was glad when we had reproductive rights that my wife and daughter could be in charge of their own body. I love it that blacks, whites, browns, women, those over 18-year-old can vote and vote unrestricted. It's a great system we have, and let's not lose it. Um, I am starting this podcast, Good Skill Podcast. I believe in skill. I don't believe in luck. I think luck, if you wait for luck, it never comes. I think the more skill you have and the more you employ that skill, the better luck you have, which is called good fortune. And so this podcast, which will be on YouTube TV and it'll come out, I think, in the next couple of weeks, um, I will be great. I'm interviewing top leaders in their industry, whether it's in the finance, hedge funds, in the fitness industry, extreme sports. I just interviewed Derek McManus, who is from Australia and is in their STAR group, which is in their highest law enforcement anti-terrorism group. He was shot 14 times when they were issuing a warrant, and he survived. And he talked about that today. I interviewed Rebecca Rush, so I think you're going to be really pleased with the quality of people that we're talking to. And what I'm more interested in is the furnace inside of everybody. What makes it burn? How do you motivate yourself? Where did it come from? Because again, I think we all have superpowers, and we all want to use our powers to the best of our abilities. The skill sets we develop, whether it's if we're an artist or we're an author, or you're an athlete, or you're an advocate like I am as a litigating lawyer. So, with that said, we have some questions that I've received. One is on the Doomsday Murder case, Lori Vallow Daybell. That's just the craziest. The mother who killed two of her kids, and uh, her husband, they killed together. Laurie's husband, and then Laurie's wife and brother-in-law. Um, in this question, it said, because there's now a trial in Arizona, because it was in Utah and in Arizona, this is the Arizona. She is not waiving her speedy trial right. She wants to go on trial now. Her lawyer does not, has asked for continuance over her objections. Can that be an appealable issue? Absolutely. I think that's problematic. Thank you, Susan, for that question. Debbie asked, what are my thoughts on the Supreme Court immunity rule regarding January 6th? I'm still in shock. I don't think it's constitutionally based. I talked about it last week that the Supreme Court, the founders knew about the word immunity because of the speech and debate clause, giving immunity to Congress members who speak ill about other people on the Congress floor. They have immunity for that. They chose not to give it to the executive branch, the president. Our Supreme Court somehow wrote this into the Constitution. And now what we have is the makings of a king, because what they have said is the president has absolute immunity, cannot be charged if he has discussions in his capacity as president with anybody from the Justice Department or the cabinet. And so he can discuss killing American citizens. He can discuss burning down cities. He can discuss prosecuting what he perceives to be his opposition, and be totally immune from that. And I don't believe that our founding fathers had that in mind. I've heard that the Senate is going to introduce some legislation um, that will curtail that immunity. Bills arise in the House; they don't arise in the Senate. The House is Republican, so whatever the Senate does, that's not going to get passed. Susan again asked me, have I read Eric Larson's The Demon Unrest? Yes, I have. She wants me to explain that how it relates to the current political events. It does. It's segregating our country, dividing it in half. And I read that ugly text that I got from somebody who was a former friend in the beginning of this recap. And he, you know what he advocates? splitting the country in half, and all the whites, the blacks, the Jews like me, the browns, and liberals go on one side of the country, and all the whites or the people who are conservative Republicans go on the other. Um, I in the book, I was surprised and learned so much about the Civil War. The Alabama Proclamation, when they seceded from the Union, was directly related to slavery. It had nothing to do with exercising state rights. If you read the proclamation, it says slaves are our property right and they are part of our commerce, and we have the right to direct our commerce, and we are not going to abolish slavery. It says nothing about states' rights. So then the next comment by Kimberly says, any comment as to Boeing accepting a plea deal stemming from the criminal charges for the two crashes? Um, oh, I think they're guilty. And I think it's a real problem. I think the whistleblowers raise some real serious issues. I am really scared to be on Boeing planes. Again, we have those that are screaming for deregulation. Let some private companies um, govern their own safety. The Supreme Court 2 weeks ago ratcheted down regulatory decisions and executive orders that have been done to deregulate these enforcement powers of a lot of our government agencies, whether it's the EPA, the Transportation Authority. And I don't want the Transportation Authority or the FAA to lose their oversight rights, because I'm not leaving it up to Boeing and Delta to determine whether I'm safe in the sky. I'm going to leave it up to the FAA, because companies cut corners. So I'm very disappointed in Boeing. I actually think that they should have not accepted a plea and put him through the trial. Um, Amber asked, does the fact that Corey was represented by Thomas Pendarvis, and that's Corey Fleming, raise any eyebrows for you in the current case um, against Pendarvis? I think they're talking about a different Pendarvis. Marvin Pendarvis is in the House, and he is alleged to have taken money from his clients. Thomas Pendarvis of Beaufort is a very fine attorney. He actually does what I do, and part of our practice is suing attorneys. Um, Twitter, how do you feel about harping on a family who's been through a tragedy most can't imagine? I really would love it. I just, I don't want us to talk about family members that have been through a tragedy. And I tried to not talk about Buster in a way that I felt that he wouldn't be a victim. I disagree with some of the things that Buster may have done, but I certainly can't condemn him for having strong feelings towards his father and believing in that his father was innocent. So I think that's a real valid question, and that came from a Twitter user. Um, Finally, what are they hoping to find by unsealing the juror record in the murder trial? Barbara asked that. I think they're grasping at straws. I think they want to find any reason, any hook in the world to try to reverse and get a new trial for Alec Murdaugh. He's pled guilty on all the financial crimes, but I don't think he wants to go down as a murderer. I think that's one thing that he wants reversed. He knows he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life. So that said, let me look at our list of people here. Really, some really fine people. Um, Hello, Shay Ferrara. Uh, West Bank, Debbie says, really isn't peaceful. I agree, it's not peaceful, but they're not launching rockets into Israel. It's a tense piece. Let's agree to call it a tense piece. Um, Chris Wheeler said that he's asleep at the helm. I assume he's referring to President Biden. Yeah, I don't think he's asleep at the helm, but I do think that the job is too much for him at this point. I think saying that he's not going to schedule anything past 8 o'clock at night is just insane, because the presidency's a 24-hour job, and it's certainly more than 6 hours a day. Um, Debbie Ann said, I'm very concerned about who is advising Biden. I totally agree. I'm very concerned that maybe people are making decisions that Biden should be making. Uh, Kristen says, happy to see you. I'm happy to see you too. Debbie Ann says there are 2,000 applications to move Israel from French Jews now. that are far left. Um, yeah, France is experiencing a tremendous amount of anti-Semitism, as is a lot in Europe. And France is trying to do their best to limit their borders because between the Muslims that have infiltrated and some people from other countries, they feel like they're losing their nationalism. But that's what immigration is all about. Um, so I want everybody to continue to educate themselves, participate in the political process. If you support Biden, then have at it. If you support Trump, continue to do it. I think the more informed people we have, the better we will be as a country. Again, when I was participating in the local elections a couple months ago, only 7% of those who were registered to vote showed up to vote in the primaries. I think that's a disgrace. That tells me that we either have a lot of apathy or people who just are so disgusted with the political system that they don't want to participate. So the coming weeks are going to be exciting. My book is finished. They're putting the photographs now. It's called Anything But Bland. I will be going on doing some book signings at different colleges. I'll be going up to Philadelphia, Connecticut. I'll be doing a lot around South Carolina, North Carolina, and Georgia in the fall. And again, the Good Skill podcast, I think you're really going to like it because I'm going to talk to the best and brightest of what they do. And we're them tick. And so with that said, EB out.